Meeting. Everybody please join us for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have a couple members absent tonight, but we're still going to have a quorum. Brian, can you do a roll call, please?
Mr. Auger?
Present.
Mr. Epping is absent. Mr. Galley?
Here.
Mr. Charles is absent. And Mr. Zurich?
Here.
We have an agenda tonight with two cases. I think both of the petitioners have been at meetings before. Basically what we'll do is call your case, come up to the podium, give us a brief presentation of your case. Then we'll deliberate and, give our decision. That being said, review of tonight's agenda. We do have two new cases. Can we have a motion on the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
We have motion by Auger, support by Zurich. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? None. Motion carries. Next section, public comment for items not on the agenda. Anybody present that wants to speak on something that's not on tonight's agenda in the audience? Anybody online who wants to speak about something that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on. Unfinished business, there are no carryovers from our last meeting. We'll move right into new business and call the first case. Case number 24-021, Nicholas Shango, petitioner, requesting a 9.1 foot height variance and a 79.5 square foot sign variance, both from section 12.04B, in order to construct new ground signs at White Lakes Common on Dixie Highway.
Good evening, Nick Shango, White Lake Commons Shopping Center. I'm basically just asking to take the sign off of the White Lake Road and add that square footage to the sign I have on Dixie Highway. So that's how I came up with that, with that height. I don't want to lose the square footage that I already have that I desperately need for the tenants.
The White Lake sign, is that the sign that's been currently damaged by
Yeah.
somebody running over it or,
Yes.
or whatnot?
Yes, and to give you, to fill you in, we agreed with Brian and Dick that we're gonna remove that sign, rework that driveway in the future to be a right-in, right-out, and that'll offset those accidents there, but what I'm asking for is, I really need the signage. I got a lot of tenants, and the ones in the back are gonna need it even more now, because we are proposing those outlets in the front of the property there. So, I think it's a modest request. I'm not asking for, I'm just taking whatever was there and sticking it on one of those monuments. So I have two existing monuments on Dixie. They're the same size as the White Lake side, and I just took that square footage and I'm just gonna add on to it. I'm just gonna grow a little taller, and we're gonna put it. I forgot which driveway I'm putting it. Second driveway, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and for members of the audience or for members of the ZBA that may not know, you did present a preliminary case at the Planning Commission a while back. You are proposing to develop two outlots and add additional tenants for the center, correct?
Correct.
And the renderings in your packet now is something that you would like to see in there if it was approved by the Planning Commission?
Yes, it's gonna be consistent with that. We're in the process, I think I'm back next week for that, actually.
Okay.
But for example, those don't get a ground sign. We're just doing this for the rear tenants. I wanna make that a big point, because the center's deep. Those little shops in the back, they don't have any visibility as it stands. So at least those guys that we're putting up front, they have wall signage, that'll suffice. But the guys in the back, they, that's really what I'm needed for. It's not really a big sign, even if you give it to me, but at least I can give a little more beef to the tenants back there, that can't be seen from the road. Other than Neiman's, I mean, you only have 2 other opportunities on that sign, so I'm gonna, I can get at least 4 or 5 more guys put in the back, and then Neiman's still stays at, in that triangular area.
Okay, thanks. I'll just bring it up to the board for questions and discussion. Alan, did you want to start?
I've lived on White Lake Road, coming up on 45 years pretty quick. I appreciate, since you've purchased the shopping center, you're making improvements there.
Thank you.
and moving forward with it. I wasn't at the meeting when they approved that sign on White Lake Road. I was absent out of town at another meeting. I would have voted against that sign, and that was before you, so it's nothing on you,
No problem.
okay? It's a dangerous sign. It should never be allowed to go back up. My problem is, we're having a lot of signs. My hearing aids have been acting up, so I may be talking loud. People requesting variances on signs, gas stations and so forth. A while back, we had people come in about chickens. And I'd like to propose the same thing to this board, because there's nobody in the room for discussion, to put a moratorium on any ZBA cases coming before us until the planning commission can go to the township trustees and get funding to relook at the sign ordinance and height, size as being a problem in the township, and a lot of people are against it. Maybe the sign ordinance needs to be changed so that, I've seen that shopping center come up, go down. You're getting it to come back now, which is a good thing. As a past business building owner on Dixie, I know what you're going through, so I feel for you, and signage is important, the type of it and how it goes about, but I think this appeal is something outside of what we should be approving. It should be more in the ordinance if it's gonna be allowed. That's my opinion right now.
Thank you. I was gonna say, to touch on that, it depends on how big the site is and where it's located. So if you have a small site and you have good visibility off the building, the ground sign, then that's just extra. What I'm asking for here is, imagine you're at the UPS store at the back of the plaza. You wouldn't even know it because of the grade of the street. And I've passed that shopping center. Growing up, we have a shopping center in Grand Blanc, in Sault Ste. Marie. We're in Clio, we're in Vienna. And, my dad always wanted to buy that place. I'm like, you can't see anything, He's like, I'm going to buy it. If that comes out, I'm going to buy it. I'm like, you can't. And until he actually went and bought it, I didn't know what was in there. So, and we're also small business owners. We run gas stations. We have UPS stores. We have Anytime Fitness gyms. We have a gym on that property at Anytime. We have a juice bar. It's called Clean Juice. Signage is sensitive when the site is small and it's very tall sign, obnoxious. Maybe it's dangerous leaving. Here, where it's placed, very low risk. You don't really feel it. Even if I add 4 or 5 feet to that sign, you don't feel it. Matter of fact, you don't even see the sign on Dixie when you're driving because it's fast traffic. That little sign on Dixie, it's only this big. You can't see it. So I'm just trying to help the guy whoever's leasing in the back. We're full in the back, but in the future, somebody leaves, somebody comes. So it's for that purpose. It's really not even enough. I need like another 100 square feet to make it enough, but then that's going to get too tall. It's too busy. right? But so I think this is just right. Your ordinance is strict on height, really strict. But that's not my call. But you know, when I made a proposal, I'm just trying to be a modest request. And believe it or not, the 4 or 5 spaces that I gained really helps with the rear tenant leasing, because the front, everybody wants the front, but then in the back, right? So easy example, the Century 21 building has been hard to lease. Part of my plan for this development is I want to lower that berm, so you can see the building, and you know, then they'll have a wall sign, and then you can see what's going on over there. So it's just to somebody passerby, somebody other than who lives in the area. There's a lot of stuff in that plaza. There's a consignment shop. There's you know, you know, the UPS. You got another office back there. So we're trying to help these little guys that don't have visibility on the street. That's the purpose of the monument sign. The other guys, they have visibility. You know, the Office Max, we know. CVS left. You know, they closed. So the other guys on Dixie, you can see them. The Domino's, you know, see. So the 2 edges you can see, but everything in the middle next to Neiman's you can't see. So that's the idea behind it, and I think it's fair too, because I'm taking out that sign. I don't have to take the sign out, but I promised them I would, and I will. But try to help me, please. I know you get a lot of variances, but their variance is not equal to mine. I got a huge shopping center. I got way more tenants, and they don't have any wall sign that you can see from the street. So we have to look at it from the tenant perspective. For longevity, for them to be successful, you need awareness. Believe me, Clarkston's strict, they're strict, and who else is like that? Was Bloomfield strict too? I mean, they give you a little, you know, if you could see it, it's one thing. Then you can't really make an argument. But outside of the Frank's Nursery area and the Office Mac, you can't see into the plaza. You know, I'm just trying to help those guys out. So that's the idea behind it. That's why I'm asking for it.
I agree with you 100% with the berm and everything. I think that was all designed and put together through the old planning commission back when that shopping center was put together. There was a house on the corner, there was a welding shop.
Oh, okay,
There was
okay.
a lot of different things before they put in the shopping center. But what you say is good, but then the other hand, you say, okay, I'm gonna put 2 more buildings in the front, and you're gonna block Neiman's. That was Farmer Jack's, and then they added on to it, took up more square footage. Then they closed, they did away with that added square footage, and then Neiman's come along and leased it. But you need to go back to the planning commission, and they need to seriously, it's not for us. You need to go back and show them how you're gonna put 2 buildings in the front and not block the view of the people behind. The sign won't do you any good.
Well, with or without the building, they still can't be seen. It's too many. It's hundreds of feet away from the street. So we've done this on 4 or 5 different locations and in my other real estate. So I'm not concerned about that. And they have a sign. We give them that triangular part of the sign, so they're on every monument sign. That's our anchor, you could say, to the center. But we're talking about the little guys, not the Neiman's. Everybody knows Neiman's is there, and they're on every pylon. Every pylon we have, they have that triangular part, and it's the biggest sign. And the rest of them, you can't really even read it anyways. This is just in case if you're at the light and you're looking and okay, I didn't know that was there, and then possibly turn in, but. And there's space between the buildings. You'll be able to see. You'll see coming up at the next meeting. You'll get some new shots with regards to the back of the center. But really, they're only positioned in front of Neiman's. The rest of the center stays. The parking in front of the tenant stays. It's a good spot.
Anything
That's all for
additional?
now.
Mr. Zert?
My primary question was related to the berm off of White Lake Road, and you answered that your thought was you're gonna lower it so you can get the old Century 21 building more visible. I think I understand that answer. Is there anything else to add to that?
Yeah, and just so you can see into the center,
Okay.
just make a little more,
Understand.
little,
Brian, who decides that that can be done?
Planning commission.
And that has not been approved yet? No.
it's
We
part
have
of,
the green space guidelines, right?
Well, they're gonna have to meet the landscape ordinance, which
Mhm.
they fully intend to do.
Okay,
That'll be handled at the planning commission next week
okay,
as part of the overall,
Part of the
rest of
overall,
the site plan. I
okay.
mean, this is really just dealing with the signage at this point, at the ZBA.
Okay, well, I lost, oh, there it is. So the existing sign, you call it the G monument, has 3 slots. Besides Neiman's, which is on the top of all of
Right.
them, there's 3 slots. In your height of whatever it is, 15 feet, is gonna be adding 12, 6 per side.
so I already have, I have 3, existing monument.
Right, 3.
I'm sorry, is that elevation
A,
6?
B, and G,
Yeah.
you call it.
Yeah, A and B, there, I got 3 of those already. One's on White Lake, the one they hit, and the other 2 are on Dixie.
Understand?
One's on One Drive,
But
and
the
all I'm
one you're
doing is.
proposing will hold 12 slots.
Yeah, we're just taking that square footage of the one that I'm removing, and I'm adding it to one of the monuments. The other one's gonna stay the same. I'm not even asking it for 2, I'm just asking it for 1,
Okay.
because then I'd be asking for too much square
And I
footage.
don't know the exact distance between the monuments A and B right now, but they're a good 50 or 100 feet. Why wouldn't you not consider putting in 2 more monuments that were the exact same shape, size, and look along Dixie Highway?
Because I know that it's a tall ask, so what I do is, I mean, I would love to do the both, but, I think it's, when you ask for these kind of things, it's in every city, it's not just you guys. I do this every month. I'm in a meeting like this, and, the idea is, whatever I'm removing, I'm asking it to get back, and from the ZBA perspective, which is very hard to overturn ZBA, we know that, right? You gotta have a really good reason. The reason is gonna be, if I take it out, I am already approved for a certain amount of square footage. I'm only just relocating that square footage. So now it's a matter of, do you mind it to be a little taller?
I think I understand your argument,
Yeah.
but my question is, why don't you put in 2 more signs along Dixie Highway
It's,
that are of the same structure and size as the 2 that are there now?
it's just, you're not gonna, you don't catch, it doesn't catch you. I'll be honest with you, I drive it all the time. For the first year that I own this, you're just going, it's 55 mile an hour
So
traffic.
your answer is basically you don't feel that that will pay off for you?
Yeah, it's not gonna, when they're this big, you can't see. You're already missing, when you're driving, your head is here. You gotta get something. That's why monuments, if they're done properly and they're not like obstructing the street, I can catch the middle of it,
Right,
so
but our ordinance is 6 foot, right, Brian?
it's,
6
yeah.
foot, okay.
And
I'm
costly.
all set for right now. I'm hesitating a little bit on this.
So, to kind of piggyback off what Ken was saying, the current 3 monument signs that was approved on the original site plan when it was developed.
No, it was a ZBA approval back when Neiman's came in,
Okay,
so.
To do what, add the 3rd sign?
Yes, to have all 3 signs, they're 8 feet tall, plus the wall signage.
okay.
That was, I believe, 2013 when that was done.
And our wall signs on the building are determined by the frontage of each building per the
Yes.
ordinance.
Correct.
He does have the argument that he had, obviously it is a giant parcel, so how are we calculating how much ground size square footage he gets?
Well, each tenant, and this used to be, this is zone C2, okay? In our old ordinance, before we changed it in 2020, he was allowed, for wall signage, 2 square feet per lineal foot of width for that tenant space. Neiman's is separate, cause that got a variance, because it was so far back. Both Krogers did the same thing, because they were so far set. Now, with the new ordinance, when that took effect, because of the Gilbert versus Reed decision in 2020, we had to change everything in it. The wall signs got more restrictive, and there were 1 square foot per lineal foot of tenant width. So wall signs, any new wall signs he's submitted over the years now, since that ordinance, they've actually gotten smaller. The ground sign provisions are the same as what they were originally, and, 6 feet in height has been the standard here since, 1993. So, when that planning commission, their effort was to allow monuments and no pole signs anymore. And, the new ordinance states that if he changes a face with a new tenant, they have to come in and get permits now. And that's kind of an indirect way to get signs that are non-compliant, compliant. Now, he's gotten a variance for these, so, it's okay for him to switch faces, we call it.
Faceplates.
Yeah, but the 6-foot standard's been in place in this township for a long, long time.
And he's currently at
8, I believe.
8 foot 9 inch.
I mean, considering the width and size of the property, the high-speed road, how far the buildings are off the road, I mean, those are all good arguments by the petitioner. And, I can see why additional monument signs would have been granted for additional tenant spaces because of the size of the, and the amount of tenants. It seems to me when this is an existing one, so it's a little bit different, but since he's redoing it to kind of go along with what Mr. Auger was saying, more of a planning commission thing with the new site plan, for them to decide what's okay with the new buildings, and then come back to us, I would think, would be kind of a better sequence of events, or am I kind of thinking, at least in my mind?
Well, he's stated here in his testimony that he's not gonna put a ground sign out for those new buildings, so it's kinda, this is really intended for the tenants that are in the current center. It's just we've never approved a sign this tall. I think 8 or 9 is probably the tallest, and that was through a PUD on Dixie Highway. That's about as tall as we've ever approved here, to my knowledge. And, like I said, that was a planning commission thing, cause it was a PUD, the sign got hit by a car, so, they had to go through a PUD amendment. But with this one being straight zoning, you're basically looking at the sign ordinance and determining whether or not there's practical difficulty to grant, a sign this tall.
If I may, I'm sorry. The other practical difficulty is I am losing square footage helping out my counterpart, the city. They find that to be a dangerous exit, and I'm resolving that. All I'm asking back is, if I lose that sign, I really need the square footage. It's tiny, believe me. I have a lot of real estate, it's tiny.
Which I don't think, I think at least one person up here kinda hinted at the square footage really isn't the problem, it's the height, because you could put that sign somewhere else on the property, correct? Is that what you were kinda getting at?
That's my thought, even add a second sign. Add 4, A, B, C, D, and E.
But let me ask you, if you do that, how does that work? 'Cause to me, that's too scattered. If I'm driving, that's a lot of signs, and then you kinda want, when you have a center, we have maybe 4 or 5 big centers like this, they're okay? When you get them all on one, you can see all your guys. Secondly, I'm gonna come back later and demand signage for the Franks Nursery. That's gonna be, considered junior big box or big box. They don't come without a sign. So I'm gonna come to planning, I'm gonna say, XYZ wants to come here, they need a sign, and I'll show you my leases. I did in Farmington, I did in Sault Ste. Marie, they need a monument sign no matter what. And then plus wall signage, so then what do we do for them? So either way, you have to decide at some point, how do we distribute the signage? But 6 feet, the problem that you just said, I can't make it wide enough, and I like to have them all together. Like, I don't mind doing 2 where all the big box guys go on one, and then all the mom and pop shops go on the other. But the idea is, when you're passing by, it has to be all in one location. it doesn't help the tenant, and it's very, you know what I mean? So it's not about money, it's just, it makes more sense when they're clustered together. So that's, and then I lose, if you're coming on White Lake, you lose all, you know, you have no idea what's in the center. So now they gotta go, they can go right in, but they don't know what's there. So now I gotta show it on Dixie. You know, like I said, thank God I'm okay right now. I'm just thinking ahead. But you gotta address that Frank's Nursery. That's almost 20,000 square feet that I'm gonna develop. They're gonna need a money to sign, 100% of some sort. And theirs cannot be small like that. They have certain sizes, you know. So just some food for thought as we move forward. But maybe you guys have an idea. I'll be happy to take a look at it. But this is very little signage, and I'd be losing valuable signage, particularly because I am losing White Lake. You know, I'm losing it, and you know, you kind of got to go around the other way to figure out what's in the center. Very a unique circumstance, which poses a practical difficulty in this kind of scenario. Usually, you have one on each side. Usually, the city will say you get one monument on one major thoroughfare and one on the other. They usually cap you at 2. Here, they probably gave them 2 because of the height, otherwise that would have been 1. You know, most cities like 8 to 10 feet tall, and then you get one on this side, you get one on the other road, and that's that. So, but I just want a heads up, I am gonna come back for the Franks, and I'm gonna tell Dick and Brian, at the next one, because, part of it is asking for wall signage. I was reading the ordinance on the, on this outlot, so I wanna give them wall signage, and I'm asking for signage already for the old nursery. That's gonna become a building, so.
Yeah, no, I sympathize with your cause, and I think we get what you're trying to do. We're just trying to strike a balance and think of something, you know, reasonable that will work long-term
I think
for you and the township.
And for context, you know, if we wait for planning, that's gonna be a long process, and with all due respect, if somebody has like a half an acre, this is a non-conversation, because they have all, you can see that, you know, if I'm standing here, I can see your wall sign, I know what's there, I know what's on the property, if it's a gas station, if it's a small retail center, but, when you wanna get something good to come to the center, they need a chunky sign, it's gotta be at least 2 feet tall, at least 4 feet wide. We don't even have that. I don't even know what I would do. I would have to eliminate signage out of my existing guys, but that would need at least 2 or 3 spaces. And if you want, I can give a case study to Brian. He can give it to you guys. We have are you familiar with 9 Mile in Farmington?
It's, yeah, I mean, I think we have enough information here to deliberate and come up with a plan on what we're gonna do, so, yeah, I mean, I appreciate all your input. But did you guys have any more questions or suggestions, or?
No, I'm opposed to it for the height and the square footage. I think it's premature on his point to be coming in. There's a lot the planning commission is gonna have to look at. This, not us, it's the planning commission. We're a judicial board. We're not like the planning commission. You have the trustees you can go to. The only relief from us is circuit court, okay? I think it's way premature. I would like to see the planning commission request the township trustees to provide a budget and have our township planner and Brian relook at the sign ordinance. Then you can put your input into them, just like you did to us, and explain it in detail, and say what shopping centers, that has a meaning when you're redoing an ordinance. And maybe they can shoot it through, and by the time your construction won't end until next year anyway, at the end of the year. Look at the whole thing.
That was kind of my point too, with the buildings going in and stuff. That's
The
gonna
berm.
change something else. What are we reworking? It's kind of more part of the other plan, and that should be vetted and then come.
Exactly.
That's what I was saying, you know, in my mind, it was out of sequence a little bit, but Ken, did you have anything to add?
No, I think before I make a proposal, I would just like to say again that I really think that you're gonna have to think seriously about adding more smaller signs. And I think you can do that. You have, whatever it is, 120 feet of along Dixie Highway. If you really do lower the berm and it's approved to lower the berm, you could put a small sign there for your new bigger anchor. You know, I think there's a lot of choices that you have. But I'd like to suggest that in case number 24-021, for the request of a height variation and a variance and a square foot variance, that we reject this proposal.
Support?
We have motion and support. I guess I'll just, I don't know if it's appropriate, I just wanted to correct the record on, I think Mr. Zirk said it a couple of times. He said he has like 120 foot of frontage. There's a couple thousand feet of frontage here.
Yeah, it's, well, I think.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You're seeing the
Yeah, I was
120
looking
foot
at the
right
wrong,
away.
yeah.
I just.
Yeah,
didn't
thank
want-
you for the correct, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Okay. We had a motion and a by Zurich, support by Auger. Roll call, please.
Mr. Auger,
Yes.
Mr. Galley,
Yes.
Mr. Zurich.
Yes.
Okay, so your motion for the height variance as proposed did not pass, but I think, you know, the advice from us was you're gonna be at the planning commission. You know, there may be some relief you could see based on the whole reworking of the
Yeah.
plaza.
They're not gonna do anything. That's a 6-month to 18-month process.
Yeah.
That's not possible.
Okay,
That's-
well, thank you.
That's not possible.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, case number two, case 24-022, Chris Terry petitioner, requesting a 16.8 foot side yard setback from section 4.1D, footnote 1D, in order to make construction of a new multiple family building located at 6600 Trillium Village Drive, zoned R2 multiple family residential. Mr. Terry?
I just want to give you, each one
Yeah,
of these.
that's fine.
It's, drone shots. These are actually 3 years old as well, so these trees have had 3 more years to mature. And that was done during the end of season fall when the leaves are dead, to kind of show you the protection between, we're looking at this building here and where this is the line that we're going off of.
Yep.
And then, you turn that way to the, and I just want to point out the corner is 53, the center is 70, and the rear of the building is 85 feet off of that.
So
line.
it angles away as you go.
It angles away as we go, correct.
And right now, there's, well, go ahead.
If, for the record, the petitioner handed us out a overhead view of his parcel, just showing the exact dimensions from the property lines from where the new building is proposed. Okay,
This is unit 136, feet.
Yeah, that's,
Yes.
that's
18
the
unit.
one in question.
Okay,
Unit
thank you.
one, correct.
all right, so give us a brief summary.
So I'm trying to construct a building that was there. This project was originally put in, I think, in 2003. All of the roads, the infrastructure is in, the current sewer, water, electrical transformers, sidewalks have all been in. This plan, the master deed has been amended, and if you see that plot that I give you that shows you the yard of 136 area, everything is clearly listed in the new bylaws, the master deed, which I have, if you need to see a copy of that, which tells you which each unit is responsible for what and where it is at. And I'm proposing to put the building right back where it was. We didn't create this hardship, the current owner didn't create it. The ordinance changed in 2021 from a 40-foot setback to a 70-foot setback, and that's what has triggered this request today.
Okay, so this building is essentially, in layman's terms, a continued phase of a pre-constructed project where the building layouts, plans, designs, sewer lines, water lines, roads were already put in place, and you're just asking to put the building exactly where it was intended to be on the original approval.
Correct.
Okay.
You're not changing any footings,
It's the same,
adding any footings or anything of that nature?
nope, it's the same footprint that was originally approved twice. It got approved again in 2016 or 17 when they put in Vista Springs. This plan was approved again. And, yeah, and then now I'm proposing to finish the other two buildings here on this
And Vista
property.
Springs being the addition of the retirement home at
There-
the far end of the facility.
Correct. So it was, there was supposed to be 133, and it has since been, Vista Springs took 54, the 24 unit is currently there, and then we have these lots left.
That's the senior center that was built there?
All right, I'll bring it up here for any questions. Ken, you want to start this time?
Can you tell me that, you have pictures here of your proposed building. Is that a brick veneer on the outside, or what is this building design, the exterior is significantly different than what was planned, I think, at least what is currently built. Can you tell me more about the exterior of your proposed building?
Yeah, it's a full brick, and then the siding would be a composite wood look type siding is what I'm proposing at this time.
No vinyl, no stucco.
No vinyl, no stucco.
And what drove you to make such a big change?
Big change in, well, these buildings were constructed in 2003, and, you know, things have changed. I feel that I'm marketing towards a different, different type of people.
Yeah, you got a slightly bigger balcony and.
Young professionals and, you know, elderly people that are trying to, I'm gonna have elevators in there, you know, someone that maybe wanna downsize, that lives in Clarkson now, that has a big house, and they don't really have very many places, to go. So I want something that's gonna cater to a little bit of everybody. It's a very nature-like scene back there. I'm sure you've drove back there and you've seen the pond and the trees. And I feel like the architecture complements that. You know, Vista Springs doesn't look like the building that is currently there neither. So it's a large parcel, and the way that,
Do you plan on doing anything with the I guess what you would call the footings for the future garage?
I'm gonna build the garages. Yeah, that whole site's gonna get developed. The garages are gonna be built, carports are going in, the sidewalks are gonna be finished. You know, my intent is to make this site what it can be. It hasn't had the support it's needed, and I think that in order to do that, we have to be able to get 18 units there.
You mentioned the bylaws, I think. Say that again now. What's the intention to have the two new buildings different from the existing building, or?
So, yes, I maintain my buildings myself, basically. So those areas that are all called out in those bylaws, like that yard area is my yard area to maintain, to pay for, to cut the grass and all of that. I'm not.
And how does, it's a private road, how does the funding for the road and?
It's all, so that's, all that is divided as well, and that's part of the HOA that we all share. Vista Springs, the 25 units, and our buildings. It's all clearly defined and laid out in there.
Does that cause any problems for the township?
No, they're private roads, so, they're up to the HOA to maintain them, because this is a condo, so they're all part owners of that common area.
And when that originally was developed, there was a big hoopla on the road dumping out onto Maybe Road. It's one way, I think, still one way, and how could that ever get changed?
That's really a planning commission decision. That was done because of the traffic congestion on Maybe at the time, and it's still a thing. And, to be honest with you, most people still go down the wrong way. You know, they kind of look around the corner and go. But, again, it's private, so it's all governed by that HOA, and if they wanted to really put a stop to that, there's ways they could, you know, but, you know, the HOA's got a lot of maintenance responsibility, just like any other condominium association.
I mean, essentially, it's like a mini Oakhurst. There's different neighborhoods within that have their own separate association to maintain their separate parts, but yet they all maintain the roads and the common areas
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, it's it's not quite an umbrella association, but it's essentially, you're right, they have, you know, he would own 18, you know, parts, or, you know, 18 sets of dues he would pay.
If they repave the road, he owns 18 shares of whatever the
Sure,
cost is.
correct.
Yeah, everybody shares the slices of the pie.
And I guess as the planning commission representative, Mr. Terry came to our last meeting and presented this to the planning commission, and, you know, you can correct me if I'm speaking wrong, but he made, you know, representations of, he wants to contribute and improve the amenities, improve what's already there, bring it up to par, because it'll do nothing but help everybody else and help sell his buildings. Correct?
Absolutely, and this is part of the, you know, the Dixie Highway Improvement Zone. You wanna make it more walkable, you know, I want to make this to where it's easy to access, you know, by foot from downtown, and it's something where people want to, you know, walk their dogs through there. It's a nice setting, and it hasn't been, upkept. In order to do that, I believe that you know, these buildings need to be constructed, and
I guess I'm all set. The only thing that initially bothered me was making sure, if you will, the quality of the exterior was at least or better than the existing.
the quality is.
Yeah, I'm good with it.
Okay, yeah.
I'm good with
yeah.
it.
Alan, did you have any questions?
Now, just to be clear, because I've sold some of the condominiums that are in the original project
Okay,
as a realtor, these are all gonna be rentals?
correct.
You're not gonna build them so that they could be spun off and made into individual condos in the future?
No, I have one tax ID, so I had the option to make, but I have one tax ID number for one building. And that building, if that building was to be sold, it would have to be sold as a whole, and I plan on holding these buildings for forever, so it's not even a question in my mind if, they will be sold. And
Now,
I've lived in Independence Township my whole life as well, so I respect what you guys are doing and what, you know, what is there, and, you know, I'm very much part of this town, and so I'm not gonna do anything to make it not look good, or it's not going to decrease the value of anybody's property, around us. If anything, it's just gonna make it go up, because people are gonna want to live there and they're gonna wanna own it.
I just wanna, one more thing. You said that the documents have all been, the condominium documents have all been approved by all owners
Correct.
of the condominiums, the individual homes, the elderly, and everything is all been approved by all of them?
Correct.
Just,
And it's on file at Oakland County and Independence Township, and I have a copy here. So that was done about, well, a little over a year ago now.
okay, because we get a lot of cases before us and people don't understand that keep a clear title on something, when you're in a condominium, you do need to make amendments to the documents and get them recorded to ensure your title, because it could go out of title. I listened to the planning commission meeting, and I think somebody on the planning commission mentioned this is similar to a lot of cases where we have on our smaller lakes that were cottage lots and things. I don't have a problem with it. It was all purposely designed and met all the criteria back when the major investment was done with the footings and the planning of it and that. And I appreciate you following in that direction, so I don't have a problem with this.
Is there anything else we should be aware of? Any comment cards returned? Any?
Yeah, I spoke to a resident today. Their concern was, not really related to the setback, more so, is this gonna be low-income housing, that kind of thing. And I indicated to them that there's no intention for this to be Section 8 or anything like that. And I think the buffer, or, you know, the trees have now matured to a point, the pines along the property line, that you're not gonna really make any change to those, or you're not gonna impact those. So, you know, they were fine after I just explained a little bit more about the case.
Mhm.
There is somebody online, so if you wanna open the public hearing, you can, because they didn't speak at the last one.
Yeah, so, I'll take public comment. Obviously, there's nobody in the audience to comment on the case online. We have one viewer. Were you here to comment on this case?
No, no comment.
Okay, thank you.
Just one more thing. Did you guys go over lighting around the buildings for the people back in the Mockingbirds subdivision or whatever it is?
That'll be, yeah, next, when he comes back
I believe he's
for
coming
final.
back for a final approval. It was
Yeah.
preliminary, so, yeah, we would check lighting, make sure it meets all the township
So it's not
Yeah.
glaring down the neighborhood?
directional
Thank you.
lighting plan, correct?
I'm good.
Yeah, he
Okay.
received conceptual approval at the last meeting.
Okay.
Anybody have a idea on a motion, or?
I'll make a motion in case 24022, to approve the request as submitted with the 16.8 foot side yard setback and the, I think that's the major, request in this. Being the fact that this is, the hardship is, this is an old existing development that, because of times, was put on hold, and now he's going ahead with it with all this preliminary infrastructure already done. This is, he's got a major hardship to have to redo all of that.
Is it worth adding that we are under the impression that the same footprint is from the original design?
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
Okay, so we have a motion and an amendment. A motion made by Augur, support by
Support?
Zerk. Support by Mr. Zerk. Roll call, Mr. Ottman?
Mr. Galley?
Yes.
Mr. Zurich?
Yes.
Mr. Auger?
Yes.
Okay. So you're approved. Congratulations.
Thank you
And
very much.
good luck at your next planning meeting. Okay, that concludes new business.
Wait, Brian.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So moving on, next item is approval of minutes, regular meeting minutes of October 2nd, 2024. I believe, Alan, you had some comments?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to not approve the minutes of the regular meeting of October 2nd, 2024. They're not in enough detail dealing with the case on Pine Knob sign. Most of the discussion was not included. I'm the only one that voted against the sign, and I stated when I didn't vote for it, all the items that I mentioned in our discussion were the reasons for it, and I think those should be included in the minutes, so I'd like not to approve the minutes at this time and have our secretary that types them up remotely include them and bring them back so that we can review them in completion.
Okay, I'll support that with a little bit of comment. Was it Erin Matisse that does them still?
Yeah.
And she, I think, watches remotely and listens to it and tries to do it. So, yeah, so she could rewatch it and add more detail on some of the comments on the case, I believe.
Yeah, I'm looking for,
Was that towards the end of the meeting, or?
yeah,
wasn't here.
I wanted to see how, Alan, cause Alan made,
Yes, I
he
didn't
did,
make.
it's not really in here.
I made a lot of mention to all the different signs in the township in our discussion, and,
Well, in your statement of why you voted no is, I don't see it in here. Cause I remember you were clear on that.
yeah, when we took the vote.
Yeah.
So Alan's motion was to not approve them till changes are made to the comments on that case, and I'll I'll support Alan's request to amend and submit at the next meeting.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none. Next, discussion?
Brian, I mentioned during the first case of doing a moratorium on signs coming before the ZBA until the planning commission could go to the trustees and see if they would approve funding to relook at the sign ordinance. Is that appropriate for us to do?
Well, moratorium is a little bit challenging because you have to have a finite reason why for the public benefit to do it, and I believe there has to be a finite time put on it. I'll tell you, we spent at least a year amending this ordinance.
I
During
remember.
COVID,
Yeah.
we did it, and because of the Gilbert Reed decision, which puts a lot of hamstrings.
I'm not familiar with that, so.
Yeah, so that basically the US Supreme Court, there was a case in Arizona dealing with a temporary sign for a church that a overzealous code enforcement officer took the sign, cited them on a weekend, and this ended up in the US Supreme Court. And Clarence Thomas did the majority opinion, which basically says you're not allowed to read a sign to know what it is. So a menu board, we would call something a menu board in our old ordinance. Now it's a drive-through accessory sign. So basically, you can only regulate time, place, and manner. You can't, if you have to read a sign, you're reading content, and you're not allowed to do that anymore. So I mean, there's been communities that have been sued over this because they hadn't updated our ordinance. So we essentially took our current ordinance, or our old ordinance, and changed some things around. The temporary sign language is very confusing, but because it's lumping a lot of things in there. We can't regulate signs under 15 square feet. It's very, very difficult. It's very confusing, but the framework of ground signs and wall signs essentially stayed the same. Because what we did was, instead of going by zoning district, we went by sign district areas, so like overlay zones.
Okay.
And to try to get some consistency, so we, like on Dixie Highway, he has more latitude on the setback, sign setback, but not necessarily on Sashabaw. They're just two different characteristics. And we used to see a lot of signs come to before the ZBA for sign setback on Dixie because there's no room, so we tried to do it in that format to really, which was pretty, that was a way outside the box idea we had, that between Dick and I, to do that. But it helped because now it's easier for people to get signs done on Dixie. The one thing that I mentioned during the meeting that is critical is when it used to be you could just swap faces on a sign.
Yeah.
Nobody would care. That was never a permit required for that. Now it requires a permit, so if your sign is non-compliant and you get a new tenant in and you swap the face, code enforcement will send you a letter and tell you come in and get a permit, and if it's not meeting the ordinance or it never got a variance, he's gonna have to bring it into compliance, and we've had pretty good success with that. The other thing we brought in, obviously, was the electronic messaging.
Because I know, been on the board a long time, and we've had a lot of gas stations that we've negotiated with on this board.
And that's been
And when they
fixed.
went to change a face and got them to lower them down, get them off the tall poles to closer to the ground. Square footage, we've worked with them, depending on the location, their hardship with obstacles and stuff. I know no ordinance is gonna be perfect from my past experience being on City of Pontiac's DBA and stuff. But I just have a feeling, a lot of people, we turn down signs, because of square footage and
Well, and they
stuff.
made people shrink what they brought in,
Yeah,
Genesis being one of them.
Yeah.
Starbucks, so,
and like the shopping center, I'm not opposed to the tenants getting signage. Because I know from a past business owner, building owner, people want signage. And the liquor store that's not even open yet, all the windows are covered with advertisement now.
he's been made aware of that.
And, you know, as you're driving down the street, you pick up different things when you're on a board like this, and,
Well, and that's been ratcheted down too, cause that used to be 20% of windows, now it's 10.
yeah.
And he was made aware of that the minute he put those up there. Cause we're on a mission about temporary signs right now, obviously with the election being over now,
Yeah.
that will help. But, you know, even yesterday, we picked up 180 some odd signs
Yeah.
placed
Well,
illegally.
maybe Brian could take it to the planning commission. I know their plate's pretty full with a lot of stuff, but maybe he could take it to them that we have interest in them revisiting the sign ordinance to,
Yeah,
help
It
eliminate-
seems we've granted, over the last 10 years, relief and given people an additional wall sign or slightly more square footage. I mean,
Starbucks
of
across
course,
the
the case
street.
we recently had was a little bit out of the box, but in my mind, that's a very unique parcel, right? Yeah, Starbucks, there's been a couple other ones where I think, one of the fast food restaurants up the
Yeah.
street, I think we gave a north and a south, gave them an additional one. but
yeah,
they-
cause normally, like,
So
the
with-
planning commission can approve up to 3, and that used to be a special land use. We changed it when we changed the sign ordinance to where they can just request it as part of their planning commission. But the planning commission's been very good at keeping them to what they're allowed. And that's, you know, that's been, I think Art and Jake's had that scenario. They were granted 3. I don't remember them coming to ZBA, but they had to comply.
Mhm.
And, we just had a case, was it Dort Credit Union, that basically they said, well, you can have the additional signage, but you have to comply with what you're allowed there.
was it the exit signs or something the planning commission?
No,
talked about?
those are unregulated.
Okay,
But like the wall signs, they allowed them to have the additional wall signage, but they said you have to stick to what the ordinance allows. And they did, they submitted all their paperwork and, you know, that's what I checked for.
In Alan's point of, it's tough to get it perfect because there are, like, you know, the case tonight, it's a giant parcel. Some other ones are
Yep.
right up against the road, so so a little relief here and there in my mind isn't a bad thing, but something way out of the box might be too much, you know?
Yeah, cause the sign that I referred to up Dixie was the Middleton Medical Building that got hit by a car, and they, you know, when you change the sign, you have to go through minor PUD amendment. Planning Commission, I think that was an 8-foot tall sign maybe.
Oh, for the medical building, yeah.
Yeah,
I
but
think
again, it's a
that's-
PUD, so you can grant more latitude on that, and they had a lot of tenants, just like he did, I mean,
But-
so.
you know, with the speed that they're traveling on Dixie and reading signage, everybody in this area knows where Neiman's is, where Domino's is, where,
And a lot of these centers, that's in your lease, so to have a space out there or not.
yeah.
And, you know, I understand what he's trying to do. He's really going after some big-time tenants, you know, for this Frank's area, but I'm not sure that it's quite accurate that they all require a giant sign. Cause I've seen those same tenants that he's mentioned with no signage out front.
Yeah.
So let's say he does get some national tenant that fits our township, it's a need, and, you know, we're like, hey, yeah, it'd be great to have one of those here. They meet the wall signage criteria for the width of their building. He's removing one ground sign, you know, on White Lake Road. That tenant could add a ground sign, I guess. You can come and back and request that at any time.
Well, they could, but you're only allowed, I mean, on a corner, you're allowed 2 signs. He's allowed 2 signs, cause Regency Center down here with Kroger has 2. But I believe the provisions, when that was approved in '06, was or '05. That was, the second one had to be half the size of the first one. And down there, they only have a few tenants besides Kroger on their ground signs. And Kroger even came to the get a variance for their wall signage, cause
Wasn't it just a certain distance, as long as you were within so many feet, you could
It's-
put up another one?
no, it was on separate
No.
street frontages.
I understand, but for the case of Neiman's property, I mean, he could put up 3 signs along Dixie Highway, couldn't he?
Well, what was approved was 1 on White Lake and 2 on Dixie.
One at each entrance.
So-
He did have only one sign when a few years ago, and then they came before us and took that sign down. It was in the middle and was confusing, and put 2, one by each entrance.
Yeah, we should,
Yeah, we're talking about a current case, yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Are we done?
Any other discussion, any other items?
All set.
I'll make a motion to adjourn at 7.
7:05.
7:02.
7:02.
I'll support that motion, meeting adjourned at 7:02.